I've actually been wrong on two counts when it comes to electrification and motorcycles. Hello everyone, I'm back from my week-long holiday. I chose to go on a cruise around the fjords of Norway on a cruise ship. A wonderful experience, but despite the picture card perfect environment that I was in, I couldn't help thinking about motorcycling and everything about it. This is the sad life I lead. So we went away, gave the wife the chance to gently take the Michael out of me by taking random pictures like this one, but I got to enjoy some wonderful scenery. I had an absolutely wonderful time decompressing and trying to think about anything other than motorcycling, but I have to report I failed. Yes, I actually found that using this chance to step back and take a look at some other country actually led me to think back about what's happening here in the UK for motorcycling. What I did find is that I've actually been wrong on two counts when it comes to electrification and motorcycles. Now this might shock you, but don't panic. Hear me out, because yes, I was wrong, but not in the way that you might be thinking. Norway is well known as being the leading nation for electrification when it comes to transport. I was fully expecting to see a large number of electric cars and also, you would expect, a large number of electric motorcycles as well. Well, yes, it was true. I did see an awful lot of electric cars. And they weren't cheap electric cars either. There were plenty of Porsche Taycans murmuring their way past me as I wandered through the streets of Stavanger and places like that. But when it came to the motorcycles, every single one that I saw was a petrol motorcycle. So why is it? Why is it that Norway, the leading light when it comes to electrification, hasn't achieved the same thing for motorcycles? You may or may not be aware of this, but Norway is a very wealthy country. It wasn't not so long ago. Back in the 1960s, the GDP per capita in Norway was slightly lower than it was here in the UK. But as of 1969, when they discovered the Ekofisk oil field, that transformed the fortunes of that nation. So now in 2025, the GDP per capita of Norway is actually double that of here in the UK. So yes, they are now a very wealthy nation. And they've been able to pour £1.4 trillion into what they call a sovereign wealth fund. And this is from the profits of the oil industry. And that generates over £70 billion of interest every year. Now, what all that wealth enables them to do is to put in place some pretty serious subsidies when it comes to electric vehicles. So what they do is VAT exemptions for electric vehicles. Admittedly, that is now capped at £35,000. So any vehicle up to £35,000 is exempt, or electric vehicle up to £35,000 is exempt from VAT. They have no registration taxes for electric vehicles, free parking in many cities, and this basically means that an electric car is actually quite a bit cheaper than a petrol car in Norway. And unsurprisingly, this has resulted in in 2023, 91% of all new car sales in Norway were electric. So that's 83 were full battery electric and the rest of them were hybrids. And from an infrastructure perspective as well, they've done well there. So they've got the charging infrastructure well and truly sorted. Norway has 477 charge points for every 100,000 population. Now, that may or may not sound like a lot, but to put that into context, here in the UK, we've only got 117 charge points per 100,000 population. So yes, the charging infrastructure is 4 times greater than it is here in the UK. So they've kind of got the charging infrastructure side of things sorted. So yes, it's not surprising that when I stepped off the ferry, I was being passed on a regular basis by electric Porsches, Teslas, all the high value, top of the range electric vehicles you can imagine. They were all in evidence, but all the motorcycles passing me, they were petrol. So this wasn't just me not noticing the electric motorcycles. I did the research. and made sure that my perception of the world in Norway was correct. And yes, it's true that only 1.2% of Norway's motorcycle fleet is electric. So, here in the UK it is slightly lower than 1%, but it's hardly, streets ahead in Norway, is it, at 1.2%? So you could argue that this is a total failure of the system over in Norway. Now, one of the clear narratives when it comes to the uptake of electric motorcycles, or two of the clear narratives, I should say, is that one, the charging infrastructure here in the UK is holding it back, and two, that the cost of electric motorcycles is holding it back. And if you solve those two problems, the uptake will increase. But Norway kind of blows that theory out of the water, doesn't it? I used to think that those two arguments were plausible until I went to Norway, and now I know that it's not plausible, because you have got the situation where electric motorcycles, they're not that much more expensive than petrol. Admittedly, the subsidies aren't quite as good for motorcycles as they are for cars, but still an electric motorcycle in Norway is a lot cheaper than it is here in the UK. A Zero SRF, for example, I believe is about £15,000 in Norway. It's £17,000 here in the UK. So as you can see, the prices for electric motorcycles is a bit better, and the petrol ones face an awful lot of charges or taxation on top to make them less conducive to buyers, shall we say. And they've got the charging infrastructure. There's no way that you can go around Norway and say that there's an issue with accessing a charging point at any point. So the two drag factors that everybody claims is preventing people from taking up motorcycles, well, they've been eliminated in Norway. So why haven't Norwegian bikers taken up electric motorcycles? Now, admittedly, I didn't get to speak directly to any Norwegian bikers while I was there. I was in the tourist bubble, being ferried around on a cruise ship, and obviously coach tours off of the cruise ship. Didn't really get the opportunity to meet up with any Norwegian bikers to speak to them. So if there are any Norwegian riders who are watching this video, please do put some comment in the comments below this video to let us know what your opinion is. But yeah, as far as I can tell, Norwegian bikers, pretty much the same as UK bikers, are entirely disinterested in electric motorcycles. It doesn't meet their needs, it's not what they want, and it certainly isn't what they're buying. The figures back this up. So when you look at the UK, you look at the incentives that the UK government provides. I mean, yes, we've got the plug-in grant for motorcycles, a mere £500. It doesn't scratch the surface, really. Doesn't make motorcycles that much cheaper. And the charging infrastructure, as we know, isn't great. Vehicle excise duty. Electric motorcycles were exempt from vehicle excise duty until this year, when they decided to take that incentive away. Now, part of the reason for this is that we're not a wealthy nation here in the UK anymore, and the government just can't afford the subsidies that they can afford in Norway. So it's obvious that the UK government switches from the carrot of incentives to the stick of mandates, shall we say, more readily. And we've seen that with the car industry. They've introduced last year the ZEV mandate, which mandated car manufacturers to sell a quota of 22% of all car sales in the UK must be fully electric cars. Now, for every car that they sold below that quota of 22% electric, so for every internal combustion engine car that they sold beyond that 22% quota, they got fined £15,000 for every single car that they sold. Now in 2025, this year, that quota has been ratcheted up to 28%. Admittedly, they've dropped the fine a little. It's now a mere £12,000 per extra car, but I don't think that fine level will be reduced again. And then, of course, this quota gets ratcheted up every year through to 2035, when absolutely every vehicle that's got to be sold must be fully electric, not even a hybrid. 2030, everything's got to be electric, either fully electric or hybrid. And then 5 years later, in 2035, even the hybrids get wiped out. So they've gone with this rather large stick, or you might describe it as a cudgel, to force everybody into electric cars. Now, currently, that ZEV mandate doesn't apply to motorcycles, but we know the direction of travel. We've got Keir Starmer promising to go harder and faster on every policy that everybody hates. No matter what it is, it seems he wants to go harder and faster with it. So he's probably going to want to go harder and faster with nobbling us with the electric ZEV mandate for motorcycles. If that happens, it will be catastrophic for motorcycling in the UK. The government will no doubt be looking at what's happened in Norway and said that, all these expensive incentives, which the UK government can't afford to put in place anyway, are not having an impact on motorcyclists. Now, in Norway, they seem to be pretty relaxed about this fact. They're not, as far as I'm aware, going to go with any kind of mandate in Norway. But they don't need to, do they? Let's face it, motorcycles is hardly creating a large amount of emissions, just as here in the UK, where motorcycles create 0.4% of the carbon emissions for 0.9% of the miles travelled in the transport system. So it's not a big deal here in the UK any more than it is in Norway. But the UK government has signalled quite strongly that motorcycles shouldn't be allowed to be a special case, shouldn't get special treatment, and should be treated the same as cars. So it's almost certain that the ZEV mandate in some form or another will be applied to motorcycles, because by 2035 they're not going to want to see a petrol motorcycle being sold. So yes, I was wrong in those assumptions, thinking that it was plausible that charging infrastructure and price was going to be the thing that changed the fortunes of electric motorcycles in the UK. I no longer think that that is in any way plausible, having seen what's happened in Norway. What I do think is more likely is that the UK government will go with the stick of forcing through a mandate for electric motorcycles. We cannot allow this to happen. We need to get together, show a strength and a will to oppose this. The opportunity to do that is Riders Resistance Weekend on the 5th and 6th of July. So please look out for an event near you. We're planning them up and down the country. Get along to it, support it, add your voice to it to make some real noise about this particular subject. We need the government to make a clear statement that they will not introduce any ZEV mandate for motorcycles. We've got to allow all technologies to be given space to be developed and improved, and for us as motorcyclists to pick the bikes that work best for us. That's all there is to it. So please join us for Riders Resistance Weekend on the 5th and 6th of July.